So it's my pleasure now to introduce to you Professor Alan Mackay-Sim. Alan is Director of the National Centre for Adult Stem Cell Research at Griffith University. He has had a long interest in regeneration and repair of the nervous system and has published over 120 peer-reviewed publications. In 2003, he was named Queenslander of the Year for his research on neural development and regeneration, and in 2011 he was the People's Choice Award winner at the Australian Museum Eureka Awards. Alan is going to talk to us today on stem cell transplantation for spinal cord repair. Please welcome Alan.
Thanks, Stephanie. I used to live in Adelaide a long time ago, and so it's always nice to come back and see Adelaide and see friends, which I will do next weekend. Next slide, please. So Megan has briefly introduced you to the idea of stem cells, and this picture just gives us an illustration of the embryonic stem cell on this side, making all different kinds of cells in the body, and then on that side, on the left, your right, it just indicates that, as Megan said, we have stem cells also in the body, and in fact, what we call adult stem cells come from anything other than an embryo. So in this case, there's an illustration of fetus, and I've put that in there because there are some trials using fetal nerve stem cells, and then most of the clinical trials come from adult tissues. Oh, what I wanted to do is to set my alarm just to make sure that I don't. I'm a science nerd, so I can talk about science all day, so I have to set myself a timer. So you can't really read this, but there's a website that's run by the National Institutes of Health in the United States, which is called clinicaltrials.gov, and it has a place where all the legitimate clinical trials in the world can register. And this is a clinical trial for anything you may mention. It could be drugs, could be procedures, could be, in this case, cells. So when you go there and you can look up cell transplantation, you get 3,468 clinical trials on some kind of cell transplantation. So it's not a field that's small. The next slide. So when you look up cell transplantation and spinal cord injury, you'll find that there are 14 clinical trials that are registered around the world under those designations. There's actually, if you look up stem cells as well, you get a lot of other stuff. It's not just these. So this actually gives you a better picture of the number of trials, but there's actually 15 that I've recorded. So there are proper, as it were, clinical trials happening around the world in transplanting stem cells and olfactory and sheathing cells that Stephanie mentioned into people, as well as a lot of other clinics offering stem cell treatments that are not being done in trials. So these are, as was mentioned, they might be happening in India and in China, but they're also happening in Germany, they can be happening in the United States, they can be happening in Australia, they can be happening all over the place. And these are where people are taking some kind of stem cells from people and putting them into me for a price rather than as a clinical trial. Next slide. So where are these registered clinical trials happening? You can see that on the top left here, that if your eyes are better than mine, you still won't read that. So that's China is the big one. China, the United States.
India.
India. Is it better over there?
No, it's better right there.
India.
Brazil.
Brazil.
Egypt.
Japan, and Poland. So there's a lot of clinical trials happening in China, and one of the reasons for that is that because there's an American guy of Chinese descent. His name is Wise Young, and he has set up a network of clinics in China to run formal clinical trials. Because they have a large number of spinal cord injured people there, because he would like to help them learn about how to do clinical trials in a way in a rigorous way, and also as a test of certain therapies that are currently people are paying for which there's no established scientific evidence. So he says, well, look, if it's a low risk to do these kinds of trials, then let's have formal clinical trials to see if there is scientific evidence for them, rather than charge people to do something in the hope that it will work. So how are they being transplanted? I think the first one is just intravenous, is that right?
Injured cord.
Injured cord.
Intrathecal.
Intrathecal.
Okay.
Going into the space outside the spinal cord, going into the fluid space surrounding the spinal cord, like through a lumbar puncture. And the next one's probably intravenous.
Intravenous, not stated.
Not stated. So that's when I just went to the first page of each of these trials and got this information. So they're not actually saying that. And then what have they put in? This is MSCs, mesenchymal stem cells. That means, well, we'll talk about that in a second. And this is OECs, maybe? There'll be olfactory and sheathing cells. There's a current trial in Poland there. And can anyone read the second one?
MSC.
No, this one. MSC, OEC.
Looks like N.
Neural stem cells. That's a stem cell from a fetus that's been produced by a particular company in the United States. And then the last one is the Geron trial, in which they made these oligodendrocyte precursor cells from embryonic stem cells. So MSCs, these are stem cells found in many of the tissues of the body. The ones that are mostly used are those that are found in the bone marrow. So in the bone marrow there are a couple of kinds of stem cells. So there's one that makes the blood that Megan talked about. And there's another one that makes all the tissues in the bone marrow, including the bone and fat and other cells. And they're also being used, and they're also part of the bone marrow transplant. We've just got a full bone marrow transplant. And then there are these same or similar kind of stem cell from the fat. So people have latched onto the fact that you could